Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you are new. My name is Shelby Marybeth.
If you love everything fall, from apples to cozy traditions, I can guarantee you are in the right place right now. We are going to be making a pressure cooker apple cider donuts, a country apple dumpling, and of course, you cannot have fall without some old-fashioned Kraft caramel apples. I'm also going to be using a lot of the leftovers that I use for these recipes to make a fall stovetop potpourri, so I cannot wait to share all of this with you. Since all of these recipes tend to actually have the same ingredients, I'm just going to go ahead and wash everything first. So I'm just filling up my sink with some nice warm water, putting all the apples that I'm going to be using today in there, and then to clean them, I always put about 1 part vinegar to like 3 or 4 parts water with my produce, and then I just kind of wash them off and swirl them around until they're nice and clean. Apples bring back so many fall memories for me. All the recipes that I'm using today use apples, and a lot of them also use nutmeg and cloves, and those smells just are fall. Fall is such a happy place for me, so I want to bring that happiness to my family as well. So the first thing I'm actually going to be making today is the apple cider. This apple cider is made in a pressure cooker. You can use your Instapot, you can use any type of pressure cooker, even on the stove. I happen to have a Ninja Foodie, so my Foodie has a whole bunch of different settings, but the main one I'm going to be using today is the pressure cooker setting. So the bowl I'm using is actually the bowl for my Ninja Foodie, and I'm just cutting up all the apples and placing them into the pot. I feel like most Instapot recipes are super easy, and this one is no exception. All you have to do is put in all the ingredients, and then I end up just twirling it around a little bit to incorporate it all, and then you shut it and leave it for like an hour. It's so easy, and I cannot get over how delicious this apple cider is. I am also going to be using this apple cider at the end to bake our apple cider donuts. They pair so well together, and I cannot get over how good these recipes are. I cannot wait to make them every single year, and even just try to tweak them a little bit to make them even better every single time. The next recipe I'm making now is the apple country dumplings, and oh my goodness, I made these last year, so I already knew what to expect with these. They're so good fresh. There's a nice crisp on the top and almost like a caramel on the bottom. You can see the Mountain Dew there, which I thought was super interesting with this recipe the first time I made it, but there is Mountain Dew in it, and it's delicious. Fresh out of the oven is definitely the best way to serve this recipe, although I have put it in the refrigerator before. If you heat it up in the microwave, it just becomes a little mushy. It's still delicious, but last time I put it in the oven again, and I tried not to bake it too long, but it did bring that crisp back up to the top, and it was still amazing. I just have to add how easy this recipe is to make as well. So I'm actually using some crescent rolled dough, and you use each slice on there to wrap 8 different, I'm actually halving this recipe, by the way. So all the recipes will be linked in the description. This one I made only half because the entire pan would be way too much for my family, but I'm rolling each slice of apple into the dough and just kind of mushing it around the edges to make it into a little pocket, and then you just place it into the greased pan. And then I'll be showing you the topping mix, but it's so easy. You just dump it on top, and then it goes straight in the oven, and I cannot get over how delicious this is. If you make any of these recipes and you choose just one, choose this one. I cannot recommend this one enough.
Hand in hand, building castles out of sand, reaching for the grand. As willows align, we lose track of time. Head up high, now we climb. Oh, dreaming.
So while that is baking, I'm actually gonna start making our traditional Kraft caramel apples. I just feel like you cannot have a fall season without these, so I had to include them in this little episode here. So I know you can buy the Kraft caramel bits, they're so much easier, so buy those. Do not buy these square ones with the wrappers on them. It'll take you like 30 minutes to unwrap all of these, but this recipe actually just has a little bit of vanilla in it, a little bit of water, and then you put it on the stovetop for, it took about 20 minutes for it to melt completely. You can also put it in the microwave, but I've found putting it on the stove keeps it at a nice warm temperature so that when you are dipping all of the apples, it stays a nice consistency. It doesn't get like cold and hard and then you have to microwave it again for all the other apples. I also don't know about you guys, but kids tend to eat like half of a caramel apple and then they're full. So I tried to get the smallest apples I could find at our store. These ones happen to be Gala apples. They were still delicious, but my favorite apple to caramelize is the Granny Smith apples.
She stands by the window, stares at the morning sun.
I'm going to be using wax paper to put my apples on, but I definitely recommend actually greasing the wax paper before you put your caramel apples onto it. They'll come off so much easier. Before it dries, you can also dip it in nuts or let it dry, dip it in chocolate and then nuts or whatever you like. But my family just loves the traditional Kraft caramel apples.
No need to fight.
After I was done making the caramel apples, the apple dumpling is actually finished. So I'm gonna take that out of the oven now so that I can share what it looks like with you guys. As soon as it cools off, I will do a taste test and show you what it looks like inside, but you can just see it bubbling on the bottom. That's where it's all nice and gooey and caramel. And then on the top, it's so flaky and cinnamon, sugar, delicious crispiness. I cannot get over how delicious this dish is. The apple cider was almost done at this point, so I'm starting my apple cider donuts. If you remember, I said in the beginning that I was going to use that apple cider to make these donuts as well. So I'm just starting the flour mixture and everything while I wait for the apple cider to finish. These apple cider donuts are amazing. I'm actually super surprised by how delicious they turned out, but they have all the spices and everything you would think would be with, you know, fall. You have your cinnamon, your nutmeg, you have vanilla, and of course that apple cider. So all of it together is just the perfect cocktail for fall. These are also so easy to make, and you can put them in a donut pan like I will be doing, or you can actually put them in a muffin tin. So if you don't have a donut pan, I would definitely recommend just putting them in a muffin tin and they will be just as delicious. The recipe actually talked about using a paddle mixer. I do not have one of those big like machines or anything. I just have this hand mixer and this worked just as well. So if you don't have a paddle mixer, don't worry about it. A hand mixer works just fine too.
Sometimes we'd run out of words to say, but we didn't mind. 'Cause we could lay on the ground and just stare into each other's eyes. And I remember when you kissed me, I felt the taste of your lipstick, even the brand of your ripped jeans. I can still see it all. We ran on top of buildings, just like a sea.
So at this point the apple cider was finished, so I'm just releasing the pressure inside so that I can take off the lid, and then I'm actually going to mash up all the apples before I strain everything so that I can get any extra just apple goodness out of these. I also wanted to wait for it to cool off a little bit before I strained it, so I end up using just a measuring cup to try and gather a little bit of the apple cider so that I can put it on the stove for the apple cider donuts. So the apple cider donuts are going to be best if you reduce the apple cider on your stove. So what that means is you just take about double the amount of apple cider that you're going to be using for your recipe. In this case, the recipe called for half a cup of apple cider, so I'm going to be using 1 cup of apple cider, and then I put it on the stove to boil until it's reduced to a half a cup. So this will make the apple cider donuts just that much more delicious. It just makes the apple more concentrated so that you can really taste it. This recipe recommended putting the dough into like a piping bag or a plastic baggie and then cutting a slit on the end. So that is what I tried to do, but my plastic bags were not sealed properly on the bottom and I ended up cutting 2 holes and I kind of made a mess, but I still got the dough in there, so it did not end up being easier for me, but that is an option, and I think if I didn't cut 2 holes, it would have been easier than spooning in the mixture to the donut holes. You definitely cannot have apple cider donuts without them being dipped inside cinnamon sugar. So I'm just prepping that dip so that I can dip them in there as soon as they're out of the oven. At this point, the apple cider was done, so I'm just pouring it into a sifting pan. I actually found that that was easier, and then I put it on top of a pitcher that I have. The pitcher I have is actually just really big and like a plastic one. It's nothing fancy, but it's gonna hold the amount of apple cider that this recipe made, and oh my goodness, this hot apple cider is to die for. It's delicious. 100% recommend it. If you've never made your own hot apple cider before, you need to try this one. It is amazing. This was actually me testing it out for the very first time. I had never had homemade apple cider before. I've always just bought it from the store, and I cannot get over the freshness and just the delicious taste of this. It just brings back all of those fall memories, and I cannot wait to make this every single year.
Watching yourself behind those lonely eyes. The mirror of night, I'm making it so hard to tell wrong from right. No end in sight.
So this was my first taste test of these donuts, and holy cow, they were amazing, and I am definitely going to be baking these every single year. It also pairs so well with the apple cider, so definitely make them together. I recommend it. You will not be disappointed. So now that the apple dumpling is cooled, I'm going to be taking out a piece so that I can share this one with you. I'll cut into it a little bit so you can see how like caramelly goodness it is on the bottom, and that crisp on the top is to die for. I can't even describe how delicious these are. If you just choose to make one of these recipes, definitely do this one. I mean, I recommend all of them, but this one is by far out of the park, off the scales, delicious. I'm going to be making a fall stovetop potpourri. If you don't want to leave it on your stove, you can also put it in a small crock pot, and this is just going to make your home smell so delicious. I'm using all the leftovers that I had from these recipes, so I took out those cinnamon sticks from the apple cider. I'm taking all the apples that I cut up for the apple cider, and then I'm cutting up a lemon to include in this recipe as well. I like keeping the parts of the apple with the star on them, just because I think that's the pretty part of the core, and you're not going to be doing anything else with it, and to include it in a potpourri is just perfect. I'll definitely include the recipe as with all the other ones, but this one just has a little bit of vanilla as well as nutmeg and some whole cloves. And I actually end up putting mine in a sealed container so that I can put it on the stove again another time, because our home already smells amazing right now after baking all these. But tomorrow, when that smell is gone, I will be able to warm this back up and smell it all over again. It is also such a good gift idea, so if you just put it in a nice glass airtight jar and then gift it to somebody, that is also, I think, such a wonderful idea.
If you want to see more of my fall videos, make sure to check out my playlist right here. I will also be making a whole bunch of new ones coming soon, so make sure you're subscribed if you aren't already, and I will see you all very, very soon. Bye!